Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Strongest Thor in Marvel. Chapter 61. It's cool for a while, and it's always cool. Tony is having fun right now. Until Thor and Steve came to him. I, Tony Stark, Iron Man, announce that I will be responsible for the consumption of everyone present tonight. Tony Stark, who had had 2 drinks, announced loudly. During this period of time, all the suppressed emotions were released, and tonight he decided to let himself go completely. Then his smile froze as he saw the face he least wanted to see. Look, it's him, the son of the Howard family, just like his father when he was young. Thor pointed at the pretending Stark on the stage with a look of disgust. He took Steve to meet him. Hi, big nephew, long time no see. Come on, let me introduce you. This is your Uncle Steve, Captain America, one of your father's best friends back then. His invincible big shield, it is your father's masterpiece. He emphasizes the words, your father, reminding Stark of his generation. Stark immediately had a constipated expression on his face, and War Machine Rhodes held back a smile and turned his head away. Especially, Steve, the Iron Man, didn't notice Stark's embarrassment at all, and greeted him enthusiastically. Are you Howard's son? That's great. When I first met him, he was still a single nobleman, and he kept saying that he didn't plan to get married and have children. I didn't expect you to be so old in the blink of an eye. Saying that, he even stroked Stark's dog's head like an elder. There are black lines all over Stark's forehead. Don't you have a clue, you old man? Do you have the nerve to touch your seniority in front of me, a 30-year-old man with such a baby face? Stark has goosebumps. Stop, stop. Biologically, the body's metabolism is almost stagnant during the frozen time, so your biological age is actually younger than mine, so please don't carelessly climb up the generations. Then he glared at Thor. Knowing my father doesn't count as such. This old antique is our ancestors thousands of years ago, isn't it a cheeky old cow eating young grass? Speaking of this, it hurts. Natasha Romanoff, who pretended to be an employee of the legal department a few days ago, made the self-proclaimed lover Stark touch his nose, and even made a big embarrassment in the boxing ring. Be sure to beat her. It was only later that I found out that this beautiful woman who can fight is actually a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and she is also closely related to Trudheim Manor, the name given to the manor by the protagonist. Not only Natalia, there are a large number of ladies in Trudheim Manor who, obviously can rely on their appearance to make a living, but have to rely on their own efforts. The female Thor Jane Foster, who showed her prowess a few days ago, according to legend the goddess of harvest, Sif, the #1 female warrior in God's domain, a great scientist like Maya Hansen is considered ordinary. In comparison, the cover models I met back then with only a pretty face seemed dull. Being interrupted by such a distraction, Stark's good mood lost more than half of it. Sure enough, every time I see this guy, nothing good happens. Bad old man, very bad. Unlike the calm Earth, at this time, a PY transaction is going on in the distant void. Loki muttered to himself, I'm coming back, my brother, you can't think of it. He looked in the direction of the distant Earth, and clenched the scepter in his hand. At the end of the scepter, a golden jewel glistened. Mind gems. Loki took the scepter and ran to plan. In Asgard, his plans failed, and now he has found collaborators who can use each other. Yes, in Loki's eyes, it's not Thanos using him, but he is using Thanos. When I got to the Earth and found Tesseract, with this scepter, I have the final say on everything. Unconsciously, Mind Gem subtly affected his inner thoughts, constantly expanding the dark side of his character. From the depths of the universe, a thick voice came. The Tesseract has awakened, and it's in a tiny world, the world of humans. Humans want to use its energy, but only our allies can use it. Humans are wishful thinking. He will be in the vanguard, and our army of Chiritas will follow. Give him the Earth, and we want the whole universe. How can human beings resist? They can only wait for death. Thanos looked in the direction of Earth. In his plan, the space gem is second only to the power gem in importance. The former can speed up his various actions in the universe, and the latter makes him invincible. Thor subconsciously glanced at the sky, his eyelids twitched just now. He feels that something big seems to have happened in the universe, which is the intuition from the strong. Probably, As a Pathfinder pawn, the Chirita army led by Loki will arrive soon, and Thor has no intention of stopping it. What's the matter? Did something happen? Seeing Thor's dignified expression, Miss Jane asked doubtfully. After waking up from the coma, Miss Jane doesn't seem to have the highly compatible effect she had on Mjolnir that day. He also asked Ancient One to check it out. According to Ancient One, this is the subconscious protection of the body, because she is still unable to bear this force. After this incident, Miss Jane seemed to believe in destiny even more, and her relationship with Thor seemed to develop much faster. On the same day, at Thor's request, she agreed to stay in the manor after a short hesitation. Nothing, it's just that there will be a crisis on the Earth, and an invasion by an evil alien race. Oh, Jane blinked and asked, aren't you going to remind me? Thor waved his hand. Forget it, now in the eyes of those shit-eating politicians in Washington, I am a big threat. If I mention it, maybe it will be regarded as having ulterior motives instead. Some people just remember to eat but not to remember. Let them fight. The source of this crisis is the same as 70 years ago. The people tried to control the power that did not belong to them, which caused the disaster. For Washington, Thor has no favor at all. What this group of people need is a group of obedient dogs. It is best to go out with a bomb collar and destroy those who are not obedient immediately. In fact, the more he gets in touch with this group of people, the more Thor understands why Ancient One, as the Asgardian of the world, refuses to interfere in most things. After all, in her eyes, many troubles are caused by human beings themselves. Can't Sister Natalia tell? I believe in her, but I don't want her to be in trouble. After all, she is still affiliated with S.H.I.E.L.D. So, you have to get used to it during this period of time, and better grasp this power. When the time comes, you will be able to use it. After the battle with the Destroyer, Thor tried to test Miss Jane's aptitude, and the result was not surprising. Even in Asgard, she was very good. If it was placed 1,000 years ago, there would be a high probability of being worshipped as a saint, or burned to death as a witch. S.H.I.E.L.D. was not vigilant at all and continued researching weapons. Natalia felt that the atmosphere in the Trudheim manor was different, but Thor didn't say anything, and she didn't ask. She didn't want Thor to be embarrassed, and she knew that Thor didn't want her to be embarrassed if he didn't tell her. Besides, now in S.H.I.E.L.D., she has been regarded as Thor's side by many people. In the middle of the night, a helicopter landed at the secret base of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury and Maria Hill got off the helicopter and glanced at the evacuating crowd. Nick Fury asked in a deep voice, "How bad is the situation?" Phil Coulson replied, "The worst part is not knowing. 4 hours ago, Dr. Eric detected an unusual burst of energy from the Tesseract. The doctor was not using it at the time, and the energy was completely self-triggered." Nick Fury frowned. "How about the energy intensity?" "It's still rising. After trying to get rid of it, we evacuated the personnel, and we can all evacuate in about half an hour." Maria Hill said at this time, "Director, simply evacuating personnel is useless. We need to find a way to figure out the source of this energy." "I know, but now is not the time to think about this. Evacuate personnel and important materials first. The Tesseract is not serious, it is very active now, and it is out of control." Dr. Eric said to Nick Fury with a helpless face, "We tried to unplug the power, but it was originally an energy source, and it will automatically turn on when the power is turned off, if you let it peak. Isn't that our purpose? To draw energy from the universe. It's different. We are not ready yet. There is a difference between actively accepting energy and passively accepting it." Nick Fury has a bad feeling. He asked Hawkeye Barden, who was in charge here, "What do you think? Have you noticed anything?" "Nothing. Dr. Eric didn't do anything. So, it's not our fault. Our side." Nick Fury's heart skipped a beat. "That's right. Since the Rubik's Cube is a door to the universe, it doesn't make sense that only our side can open it. The existence on the other side is probably also trying to open the door." Hawkeye expressed his guess. "Not yet," Dr. Eric added. "We're not ready to engage with them." At this moment, Tesseract suddenly burst out a strong blue light, shining on the opposite platform. Nick Fury's eyelids twitched. He realized what the bad premonition was, and quickly shouted, "Everyone stay away from the Tesseract. Combatants prepare to fire." On the platform, the blue flame gradually turned into a human form, and a demon-like figure wearing a two-horned helmet appeared. The flames dissipated slowly, and a delicate face slowly lifted up. Looking at Nick Fury and others who were facing the enemy, Loki smiled evilly. It was the smile of a devil. As for whether Captain America in the parallel world will return to this world to find Peggy in the past, it can be ignored. First of all, the protagonist will not let Loki of this universe run away with Tesseract, and Captain America does not need to go back to the 70s. Besides, even if I go back, what I see is Thor's photo. I won't have the idea of going back. The main reason is that the Thor of the two worlds meets, and some readers may feel that there is a gap. Sir, would you please put down the spear first? Although it was obvious at a glance that the other party was not kind, Nick Fury still tried to negotiate. Loki observed the surroundings for a few seconds, and suddenly swung his staff. A burst of energy hit the marinated egg. Bang bang bang. The agents, who had been prepared for a long time, fired at once, but they were far from Loki's opponents. Don't look at this kid being beaten by Thor all day long. After Thor beats up Sif, after Sif beats up, they both beat up together. But Loki has some frost giant blood, and his physical fitness is stronger than Steve's, so it's no problem to deal with a few ordinary people. In just a few rounds, almost all the surrounding agents knelt down. Oh, this one's not bad. He jumped in front of Hawkeye, who was slowly getting up and trying to resist, and the scepter pointed at his chest. Hawkeye's expression suddenly struggled, his eyes quickly turned blue, and he put the gun back. Loki smiled in satisfaction, and walked over to the shivering Dr. Eric. Nick Fury watched all this in shock. He quietly put the Tesseract into a box, closed the lid and wanted to leave. Put the box down, I need it, I came all the way here for it. He looked at Nick Fury and announced loudly, let me introduce myself, I'm Loki, from God's domain, with a great mission that you can't understand. Loki, people from God's domain. Nick Fury knew some information that others didn't know, and he blurted out, are you Thor's younger brother? Don't mention this name to me. Loki suddenly raged, I am the real king of Asgard. Okay, don't get excited, no matter who is the boss, at least we should have no grievances, right? Nick Fury interrupted his self-congratulations. Loki glanced at him, and said calmly, ants in your shoes have no enmity. I came this time to bring you good news. Your so-called freedom has bound you. Surrender to me, the great god of mischief, and the earth will have eternal peace. Nick Fury raised his forehead. Why does this guy like to pretend like Thor? He tried to stall for time, but was spotted by the renegade Hawkeye. Loki knocked him down, snatched the Tesseract and walked away. In the parking lot, Maria Hill watched Loki, Hawkeye and the others strutting out, and quickly noticed the clue. He drove quickly to catch up. With skillful driving and marksmanship, she manages to block Loki. It's a pity that her strength is not as good as Hawkeye's, and she can't stop him at all. Boom, there was a loud crash, and Nick Fury, Phil Coulson, and Maria Hill, who were wounded, turned on their communicators to exchange what they knew. The Rubik's Cube was taken by the enemy, and our personnel suffered casualties. Hill climbed out of the wrecked car and yelled, a lot of people have been buried alive. I don't know how many will survive. They need rescue. Call the rescue team, rescue the wounded. Nick Fury finished, and added, assemble everyone who did not participate in the rescue, and take back the Tesseract. Phil Coulson, you go back to the base and issue a 7 alarm. From the current situation, the war has ended, here we go. Understood. However, the opponent's strength is far beyond our imagination. I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to deal with the opponent with the means we have. Phil Coulson reminded Nick Fury. Nick Fury was silent for a while, and finally said slowly, then dispatch the Avengers. Agent Romanov, we need you to return to S.H.I.E.L.D. as soon as possible. Phil Coulson's anxious voice came from the phone. In the messy living room, Natalia's dead body was lying on the sofa. Because he brought Thor down in the ring again, he suffered tragic revenge. She lazily picked up her phone. Please, I'm on a mission, it will take a little time. The situation here is urgent for you. Something happened to the Tesseract, and Barton is controlled by the enemy. Natalia's lazy expression quickly became serious, and she immediately said coldly, what do you need me to do? Officially implement the Avengers plan. Shouldn't I go and get those guys? They don't communicate well. What's the matter? The bureau is looking for you. After hanging up the phone, Thor took the phone with a smile. Who are you responsible for? Stark or Hulk? No, Natalia said with a smile like a flower, my task is to test your attitude. Because it's Loki. Natalia had such an expression as expected. You already knew. Thor nodded. S.H.I.E.L.D's excessive use of Tesseract energy will inevitably be noticed by some forces in the universe. For them, this is a signal. A signal that the Earth is ready for a high-level war. Natalia understood a little bit. She asked without getting to the bottom of it, and returned to the previous topic. What about your attitude? Will you help us? Thor waved his hand. If I make a move, I can only temporarily solve this trouble. S.H.I.E.L.D. will not learn the lesson. They will only be more enthusiastic about weapon research. The consequences this time are still controllable, and it may not be the case next time. Then you won't make a move. Until Nick Fury realizes the mistake, I won't take action for the time being. However, before that, I can ask her to help first. Thor pointed to Jane Foster. As the new Thor, Jane's strength can deal with a more than enough Loki. In a remote town, Bruce Banner looked helplessly at the bald head in front of him. I've been hiding here, why do you still bother me? Who are you, from the military? Nick Fury shook his head. No, I'm from S.H.I.E.L.D. We've been keeping an eye on people with super abilities like this. Over the past year or so, we've blocked many people for you. Bruce Banner is very smart. S.H.I.E.L.D. will not help him resist the pressure of the military for no reason. He smiled bitterly. Then what purpose do you have? What do you want from me? It's not what we want, but the world needs you. An evil existence from extraterrestrials snatched the Tesseract, and the consequences are unpredictable. The gamma rays emitted by the Rubik's Cube are so weak that we can't track them, and you are the one who knows the gamma rays best. So you didn't come here to catch monsters? No, it's not a monster. For this type of super ability, S.H.I.E.L.D. sees it as a potential avenger. Outside the gate of Stark's industry, Phil Coulson, who had gone through untold hardships and was severely molested by Stark, heaved a sigh of relief. It is really difficult to convince this playboy. He picked up his cell phone and called Nick Fury. Boss, Tony Stark got it done. Your Bruce Banner got it done too. So there's only one Captain America left. Shall I inform him? No, it's already taken care of by Steve. 10 minutes ago, Captain America, who was boxing, received a call from Thor. Steve, the world needs you again, are you ready? I'm always ready. You're playing with fire, Commander. It's not an energy you can control. S.H.I.E.L.D's headquarters, Nick Fury, was wrangling with a group of counselors. Have you ever fought a war? Senator, in a real war, you don't want to be controlled by others. Nick Fury retorted. You mean, God's domain has declared war on us? It's not God's domain, it's Loki, he can't represent God's domain. What about his brother? What's the attitude of that Thor? A congresswoman asked. There is no malice towards us at the moment, and I promised to let the people from Trudheim Manor come to help, and helped me persuade Captain America to take action. You have the best agent group in the world to mobilize under your command, but you choose to hand over the work of saving the world to a group of freaks. The congressman said sharply. Nick Fury said in a deep voice, correct me, they are not freaks, but a group of ordinary people with special abilities. Also, I need a special response team. They may not obey orders enough, and may even lose control. But I believe that as long as applied properly, they will be the most suitable candidates. Why do you trust them? 70 years ago, we believed them, so the war was won. On the other side, evil forces are urging Loki. The Kurita people are starting to feel uneasy. When will you be able to open the portal? It won't take long as your army is as strong as you say. Loki said flatly. Are you questioning our army? Questioning the person who gave you the scepter? The voice on the other side became angry. Don't forget, who gave you this opportunity. At that time, you were defeated. I am the king of Asgard. I have been betrayed. Loki became excited. Don't forget, the Tesseract is in my hands now. Before I open the portal, I have the final say on how to act. Okay, people of God's domain, go fight your battle, and when you fail, your so-called kingdom will never be thought of again. The entire universe will no longer have your hiding place, and he will find you. Show you what a real nightmare is. Loki's phantom disappears. Will he succeed? According to the information we have learned, his brother is also on Earth. Ebony Maw bowed and said to the ugly sitting Thanos. Thanos paused, his originally purple face showing signs of turning black. For countless years, he has taken the initiative to invade other planets, and no one has ever attacked his lair. And Thor not only broke into no too holy place, but also robbed his daughter after making a fuss. Even if it wasn't his own, he slapped him hard on the face. He shot together with Black Order, but failed to keep him. For Thanos, who has always been proud, it is tantamount to the biggest black history. He is just a pawn exploring the way. Success or failure is not important. Infinite gems needs to be gathered together to implement a great plan. Before that, it doesn't make much difference whether there are one or two. The locations of the 4 gems have been confirmed, and now there are only Reality Gem and Soul Gem left. Is there any clue? He turned his head and asked Gamora. Gamora tried hard to shake her head expressionlessly. No, I've searched many places, but found nothing. Thanos nodded, not in doubt. He never suspected Gamora. He said to himself, I have a hunch that all this will end in a few years. A large crowd of people was blocked on the street in Berlin. Loki was now on the high platform, raised the scepter and knocked it down hard. I said, kneel down. The light of Mind Gem flashed, and the crowd knelt down slowly. Seeing this scene, Loki was instantly satisfied. He said slowly, isn't this right? Your race is born to be like this. The more he said, the more excited he became. Human beings are like this. The temptation of freedom deprives you of happiness. You are crazy about power and status, and you are eager to be enslaved. You are full of servility in your bones, and you are destined to be ruled by the strong. A white-haired old man broke free, stood up and shouted loudly, but it won't be for someone like you. I have lived for so many years, and I have seen many shameless people like you. Being teased by an old man like this, the third princess couldn't hold back anymore, and he became angry from embarrassment. Look at this old guy, he will be your role model. He raised the scepter, and a blast of energy shot out. A figure dressed in stars and stripes jumped in front of the old man, raised a shield to block the energy. Steve stood up and said slowly, the last time I was here, there was also a person here who wanted to put himself above others, so he knelt down. Loki was disdainful. A private. You're out of date. It's not me who is old-fashioned. I have to say, you are far from your brother. Steve inadvertently provoked Loki again, and he rushed forward angrily, and the two wrestled together. A meteor flashed across the sky, and Stark's frivolous voice came from Natalia's address book. Romanov agent, did you miss me? A smile flickered at the corner of Natalia's mouth. I never knew I had such a big nephew. Shit. A gloomy look flashed across Stark's face. It's not scary to have an acquaintance with a high seniority, but what's scary is that this guy even brought a large group of people up to seniority. Stark turned grief and anger into strength, and the intense laser bombardment sent Loki flying. He landed on the ground, opened his mask, pointed at Loki with his hand, and a laser cannon was ready to go. Drop your weapon and raise your hand, Bambi. Although Loki was going to pretend to be captured, but he's been in a bad mood recently and he's going to vent his anger. And the nickname Stark gave him made him very uncomfortable. He slowly put down the scepter, and then while Stark was relaxing, he quickly stretched out and stabbed Stark in the chest. Knocked. No response. Why is it not working? Why is it suddenly not working when it was working all the time? Stark was startled at first, and then reacted. He comforted, Man, if you don't pay attention, you will die. We already know that you can't do it, so don't emphasize it. Bang. Loki, who was furious, knocked Stark away with a stick, fully proving that Descendus dies from talking too much. Loki raised his staff high and shouted at Stark, Mortal, dare to insult the gods, you will pay the price. Before he finished speaking, a bolt of lightning struck his celestial spirit cover, and at the same time, he was hit hard on the back of the head, causing him to fall to the ground like a dog eating shit. He turned his head angrily, and then saw a heroic female warrior in black armor holding a hammer in her hand, and was stunned. Wow, seeing a really beautiful fighter for the first time, Tony whistled excitedly, and pushed Steve beside him. Old Popsicle, I suddenly believe that the story of Hua Mulan is true. Steve looked serious. Tony, don't call people casual nicknames. Also, This should be Miss Jane from Trudheim Manor, you should call her Auntie. Bar. I shouldn't be talking to you. Stark scowled, taking a few steps away. Here, Loki looked at the hammer in Miss Jane's hand. Even though he had heard about it a long time ago, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. My brother is really willing to give Mjolnir to you. It's unbelievable. It's a precious hammer, and I wear women's clothing for this. Oh, this is big news. Tony suddenly felt how wise it was to take part in this operation. Miss Gien told this illusion last time, and she didn't react much, but the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. In the communicator, Thor's voice came, beat him hard, just keep breathing. Got it, Jane replied briskly, throwing the hammer. Stupid mortals, do you think you can compete with the gods by raising Mjolnir? Loki looked disdainful, raised the scepter and rushed up. A few minutes later, impossible. Loki lay on the ground in disbelief, unable to move with the hammer on his back. He had no choice but to hit GG. Loki was captured and temporarily imprisoned in a special cell on the space carrier. It seems that the biggest problem has been solved, and everyone's attention has been put down on another matter. Why did Tesseract attract the attention of alien planets? Whether it's Tony Stark or Steve, they all have doubts about S.H.I.E.L.D. As Nick Fury tries to explain, Captain America slams a new weapon on the table. S.H.I.E.L.D. is making weapons out of Rubik's Cube, just like Hydra was 70 years ago. Nick Fury was about to explain when Stark cut him off. Come on, there is no need to deny it, I have already completed the analysis. No wonder, it will attract people from alien planets. It is said that because of Hydra's behavior, it woke up the attention of an evil alien named Supergiant. Fortunately, Thor stopped her. Unexpectedly, today's S.H.I.E.L.D. did the same. The world has not changed at all. Captain America was also filled with righteous indignation. Natalia suddenly realized. No wonder Thor had expected this incident long ago, but didn't remind him. Because S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing something shady, even if you remind him, it's useless. Why do you want to do this, can you tell me, Director? Jane Foster nodded, acquiescing to her statement. Nick Fury said with a blank expression. It is precisely because of the appearance of Thor that many people have realized the existence of other civilizations, and human beings must have strong enough weapons to protect themselves. However, we all know that Thor and Asgard have no ill will towards the Earth. Natalia argued. Yes, he didn't, but what about the other planets? If there is an Asgard, there will be other planets, and those planets may not be friendly to us. Jane Foster spoke up. Thor said that it was S.H.I.E.L.D.'s development of weapons that attracted Loki. Tesseract's energy fluctuations are a signal to other planets. The Earth has get ready to fight a high-level war. It was the same 70 years ago, and it was the same 17 years ago. Facing the threat of foreign enemies, we must have the power to make the enemy afraid. Such as nuclear deterrence. That's really effective, Stark said with a sarcasm. Unexpectedly, we have returned to the era of carrying nuclear buttons with us, which is really interesting. A man who has made his fortune selling arms, actually has the position to say such a thing. The debate has become more and more intense, and has even turned from the topic of the beginning to the attack on life. The unique sensitivity of women made both Natalia and Jane Foster aware that something was wrong. The team seemed to be disintegrated right after its establishment. No one noticed that the scepter containing the mind gem was emitting a faint blue light. No one noticed that a group of people with strange lights in their eyes had infiltrated the helicarrier led by Hawkeye. Boom, there was a huge amount of explosion, and the sky and the earth shook immediately, interrupting the crowd who were about to make a move. Not good. Natalia was the first to discover the problem. She shouted, "Calm down, we are affected by the scepter. Engine number 3 malfunctioned. It's not a serious problem for a while, but we can't fix it." Hill's voice came from the communicator. "I'll fix it." Stark quickly got up to the direction of storing the war application. Boom, another series of explosions sounded, and a large number of enemies rushed into the space carrier. Everyone in the room woke up instantly, and just about to react, there was another violent explosion, the floor cracked, and Natalia and Bruce Banner, who were far away from the door, fell through the crack together. A heavy steel pipe fell and hit the legs of the two of them heavily. Severe pain came from the calf, but Natalia had no mind to deal with it. She urgently shouted to Banner, "Hold on. Don't let it come out. Unfortunately, without transforming into a Hulk, Banner is just a frail scientist who doesn't have the endurance of an agent at all. Under the severe pain, he let out a burst of screams, and the speed of his heartbeat rose rapidly, and soon approached the threshold of 200. Natalia endured the severe pain and finally pulled her leg out from under the steel pipe. Before she had time to check her injuries, a huge amounts of roar sounded, and her heart suddenly fell to the bottom. Seeing Hulk approaching slowly with a ferocious face, Natalia didn't dare to hesitate anymore, turned around and ran away. In the breach of the helicarrier, Stark piloted the armor while commanding Captain America to help. Go to the engine control box and tell me which switches are overloaded. Okay. Steve jumped a few times, came to the control cabinet, and opened the panel. Looks like it's just a bunch of circuit boards. Very professional answer. Stark's face darkened. Boom. Natalia fell heavily to the ground, cornered by Hulk. Hulk rushed up a few steps, held it high, and punched it down. Natalia raised her arms to resist in vain. The magic bracelet barely blocked her 3 punches, her hands were already numb, and Hulk hit another heavy punch. She closed her eyes in despair, only one thing in her heart: thoughts. Will you come to rescue me at the last moment like 12 years ago? Bang! The expected death did not come, and a harsh electric shock sounded. She opened her eyes expectantly, and a figure in black armor and a red cloak stood in front of her. Jane, we are not his opponents, don't fight him head on. Although this equipment is very similar to Thor, Miss Jane's strength is basically known to her, so she quickly reminded. Miss Jane held the hammer tightly without saying a word, staring at Hulk vigilantly. In the collision just now, she realized that her strength was a bit far from that of Hulk, and only by making good use of Mjolnir's strength could she have a chance. Hulk didn't attack right away, but looked puzzled. Miss Jane's battle armor brought back some of his memories. It seems to be very similar to that big hunk who tore up Hatred. But even though Hulk was stupid, he could still tell if it was a man or a woman. After only a few seconds of silence, Hulk punched him. Miss Jane, who had been prepared for a long time, quickly turned her head to avoid the punch, and then hit Hulk's armpit with a hammer. Hulk snorted in pain, and immediately a serious green light flashed, and he roared angrily, and the whole person rushed forward. Natalia hurried up to help, and the two worked together to deal with Hulk. In a hidden corner, Thor watched the cooperation between the two and nodded secretly. He definitely wouldn't let Natalia have an accident, and came to the space carrier through the portal when the explosion sounded. If Miss Jane hadn't arrived in time, he would have rescued her in advance. With the tacit cooperation between the two, Hulk will not be able to hurt them for a while, and Thor turns to another place. Hey, congratulations for triggering the Hawkeye-related mission, Mind Barrier. You will be rewarded for completing the mission. Mind Barrier. Barton agent was controlled by Mind Gem and became an important member of Loki's plan. This incident is regarded as a shame in his life. After that, he will do this training to gain resistance to mind control magic. Mission objective. Return Hawkeye who has been mind controlled to normal. Mission reward. Immune to any mind control magic. In one aisle, Clint Barton was moving fast, trying to create more chaos and buy time. Thor fell from the sky and landed in front of him. Hawkeye quickly drew an arrow and let it rest on the bow. Under control, he stabbed his ally's back without any pressure. Seeing the rich blue light in his eyes, Thor knew that his current control was still very deep. Usually, to deal with this kind of situation, a mind-purifying magic can solve it, and the Queen Mother Frigga will. The problem is that Thor can't. Although he is a master of both magic and martial arts, most of the magic he learns is offensive. Mind purification doesn't work. Then, use physical purification. Bang bang bang. When Natalia and Jane Foster rushed over panting and dragging Bruce Banner, they saw that they were waving, "Give me back the punch," to Hawkeye's head. Thor. Oh, my God, Miss Jane exclaimed. Although this guy was controlled and temporarily became an enemy, the fight was too miserable. Hey, Agent Barton is a colleague of S.H.I.E.L.D. anyway, don't beat him to death. Natalia joked. Drip. Congratulations to the host for completing the task. The mind barrier is rewarded, immune to any mind control. Done. Thor threw Hawkeye away and handed it over to an agent who was already stunned. Don't worry, I'm not serious. There's something wrong with this guy's brain. I'll wake him up. Thor gave her a reassuring look and asked, "How's the situation? Where's Loki?" "The engine has been repaired. Loki ran away and disappeared. Moreover, Phil Coulson agent died." Natalia's face was a little heavy, and her relationship with Phil Coulson was still good. In fact, this good old man has a good relationship with most people. "Sad news, Loki escaped and killed Agent Phil Coulson," Nick Fury announced heavily. Stark, Steve, and Bruce Banner, who had just woken up, all looked serious and listened quietly without saying a word. Thor pouted. "I admit, S.H.I.E.L.D. does use Tesseract to make weapons. But I never put my bet on it, but put my hope on a riskier project. Quote, that's my ideal, Stark should know. Let's call it Avengers. No matter how powerful a weapon is, it needs excellent soldiers to use it. Gather the best people in the world together, and when the world needs them, they will work together to defeat the enemy we cannot defeat." Phil Coulson believed this until his death. He believed in heroes. "His death is my responsibility. But now, we must focus on the overall situation." Neither Stark nor Steve responded. "The purpose of Loki is to open the portal, which requires a lot of energy. Maybe we can start around the various nuclear power plants." Stark expressed his thoughts. "No, I know Loki. His character, he will not be willing to implement the plan in a sparsely populated area, he will definitely choose a densely populated place. It is best to have iconic and individual buildings," Thor reminded. Stark was taken aback. Densely populated. Sufficient energy. Iconic buildings with personality. Immediately, his face turned pale with shock. "This must have been eyeing my building." Stark hastily put on his badly damaged armor and stumbled out. Natalia glanced at Thor, seeing that he didn't stop him, and said immediately, "The Stark building is the most likely, and the population around it is also the most concentrated, so let's go there first." Steve, Bruce Banner and others quickly followed. "I'm going too," a resolute voice sounded, and Clint Barton stood at the door in full armor. "This time I take a lot of responsibility and I have to make it up." Natalia nodded, and greeted everyone to get on a fighter plane and head towards New York. "Need to call her back?" Nick Fury asked Thor. This time the crisis was beyond expectations, and he couldn't help but think of the communicator left by Captain Marvel back then. Thor shook his head. "No need, the invaders this time are at most some cannon fodder troops. As long as the Asgardians on Earth are still there will be no too powerful enemies." After a pause, he continued, "Besides, the Earth needs this ordeal to wake up those who are immersed in the illusion of peace. Otherwise, when the Asgardians leave in a few years and the other party invades in an all-round way, the defenseless Earth may be the first can't resist a wave." This passage reveals two pieces of information. One is that the Earth will suffer the most terrible invasion in a few years. The other is, the Avengers failed to prevent the portal war from breaking out in New York. "Hill agent, quickly notify the evacuated New Yorkers." Nick Fury broke out in a cold sweat. However, the top officials in Washington will not agree to evacuate a city with a population of 8 million. Even if it is passed, there will be at least a month's meeting. Nick Fury's face turned black and glowing. He had already encountered terrible consequences. "Calm down, black-corned egg." Thor held him down. "You said you should trust the Avengers. They will try their best to protect civilians. Besides, the ones who can really destroy New York will not be aliens, it's the politicians." After saying this meaningfully, Thor turned his head. "Hello, Hill agent, can you take me to see Gerson's body?" Hill was taken aback. Nick Fury's eyes flashed, and he whispered, "Take him." On a hospital bed, Phil Coulson lay unconscious. His breathing has stopped, but the electrocardiogram on the side is still fluctuating. "Are you planning to save him with the GH325 drug that is still in the experimental stage?" "Yes," Nick Fury said in a deep voice. "During the experimental stage, most of the experimental subjects had mental problems after recovery. But there is no other way. You don't have it, I have it." Thor took out a bottle of potion. "Extremis is not diluted, how about Tesseract?" Although the loss was huge, Nick Fury, who had suffered a loss, still agreed. After this disaster, he couldn't wait to give away the hot potato Tesseract. What's more, the Rubik's Cube is still in Loki's hands. After the Extremis was injected, the wound began to heal slowly. His injuries have been brought under control, and his life is safe. He just needs to recuperate for a while. After Thor finished speaking, he opened the portal and left. On the top of the Stark building, a blue light shines into the sky, as if communicating with heaven and earth. Stark took off his broken armor and waited for the Mark 7 to start up, stalling for time. Loki laughed wildly. "We have an army. What do you have against it?" Stark said flatly, "We have Hulk. The big guy. Hey, I thought he got lost. We also have Thor, and while he's a very nasty guy, he's said to be good at beating you up." Loki's smile froze, and he said angrily, "Annoying me won't do you any good. I'd like to see what happens when you and your teammates turn against each other." He lifted the scepter and touched Stark's chest. However, nothing happened. "I've never failed. Why can't I fail even though I don't have armor?" Loki sighed. Stark made up the knife. "I told you that you can't do it, but I don't believe it." Loki grabbed him by the neck. "This man is so mean. My army is coming. You will all kneel before me." He threw down the building. At this moment, the Mark 7 was finally launched, flew out quickly, and caught Tony. At the same time, at the end of the beam of light in the sky, a pitch black hole was getting bigger and bigger, and hideous alien creatures swooped down in planes they had never seen before. "It's amazing. It's a sci-fi blockbuster." Stark groaned, facing the overwhelming cheerleaders in the sky. Boom! There was a huge amount of roar, which finally alarmed the crowd below. Huge amounts of wreckage fell one by one, and the crowd fled in all directions amidst exclamations. "It's too late after all, the war has already started." Steve sighed and shouted, "Jane, Natalia, you go to support Stark, Banner and Clint help evacuate the people." The crowd dispersed, and he pointed to a group of stunned policemen. "This is not an enemy you can fight against, leave it to us, and you are responsible for the rescue." The policemen looked confused, not knowing whether to listen or not. At this time, a Kiruda soldier rushed towards a frightened child on the side of the road. Steve didn't even think about it. He swooped in, raised the shield, and killed the Zarita soldier with a single blow. The shocked child looked up and shouted excitedly, "Captain America! You are Captain America! I knew that Captain America would protect us. Captain America!" The policemen were shocked, and then noticed the shield, and their expressions changed instantly. "Follow your arrangement, Captain," the leading police officer said solemnly. In a remote corner, Bruce Banner and a group of people were blocked in the alley by a group of Kurita biochemical soldiers. Looking at the terrified people behind him, Banner sighed. He turned back with a gentle face and said, "Don't worry, there won't be any." Looking back, the muscles in his body slowly swelled up, tearing his clothes. "I'm sorry you pissed me off." A loud roar sounded. Seeing Hulk carrying a car in front of him, like Whack-A-Mole, hammering a Cheetah Hulk, the crowd behind were stunned. Today is the first time they have seen this terrifying alien creature, and the super fierce Hulk who protects himself. It turns out that aliens really exist. Oh, bad. Tony, who had killed a large number of Chiruta, saw 10 super ministers roaring in the sky not far away, Leviathan. He released a wave of missiles to bombard it, but it was unscathed. He turned his head to attract the Leviathan giant coon, and opened the communication. "Call for support, there is a large shrimp here, my attack seems to have no effect. Lead to the lower city, Hulk is over there." Steve's voice came from the address book. "Understood." Stark quickly flew up, throwing missiles towards the rear to attract aggro, and flew in the direction of Hulk. Hulk was like a tiger jumping into a flock of sheep, ravaging Chirita's soldiers crazily. The opponent's weapons could hardly penetrate his skin, but his size and strength were enough to kill Chirita in an instant. "Hulk, get angry!" Stark shouted loudly and flew over, with a supergiant coon behind him. Hulk roared, rushed forward and punched hard, making a loud noise. Leviathan's head collapsed, and pieces of armor fell off. Stark immediately released a dozen missiles, which smashed through the shed armor, and then a violent explosion occurred in its body, and the mighty Leviathan finally fell down. Hoo-hoo! Stark just breathed a sigh of relief, raised his head, and found 2 Leviathans appeared in the distance, flying towards them. A huge amount of Leviathan fell from the sky, and its huge body fell apart. Thor clapped his hands and rushed to the next target. Ordinary Kirudas can be handed over to others to deal with, and his target is only the giant Leviathan. Loki is sitting in a fighter plane, patrolling the battlefield, causing chaos here and there. A hammer flew from a distance, and the plane that couldn't dodge it exploded on the spot, and Loki fell heavily onto the balcony AHFJ of the Stark building. Surrender. Then close the portal. Loki got up from the ground, held up the scepter, stared at Jane Foster and said, I don't believe it, I won't be able to beat you. He jumped on it angrily. Although Loki, as the giants of Jotunheim, has good physical fitness, but Jane Foster has gone through the strengthening of Mjolnir and the training of Thor these days, so he is not inferior to Loki at all for a while. On the helicarrier, Nick Fury looked at the endless corridas on the screen, his expression a little ugly. The so-called cannon fodder troops are so difficult to deal with, how far will the real decisive battle go in the future? Sir, the council is calling. Hill stepped forward to report. Nick Fury's face was a little dignified. Those guys, under normal circumstances, would not interfere with SHIELD's affairs, but once they interfere, there is often no good thing. He remembered Thor's words, the ones who can really destroy New York will not be aliens but those politicians. With a frozen face, I made a video call. A congresswoman spoke up. Director Nick Fury, after a unanimous council discussion, has made a decision to use nuclear bombs on New York. I will not execute such a stupid order. Your warship is the closest to the battlefield, immediately dispatch a fighter plane, another counselor ordered, but was interrupted by Nick Fury. Once again, I will not carry out such an order. Unless my team is completely defeated, I will never drop a nuclear bomb on my own civilians. If you can't stop them, the whole world will be finished. The members of the Congress were all stern. If a nuclear bomb is used, it will be really irreparable. Marinade interrupted the call directly. In the eyes of these politicians, the lives of civilians are not life at all. In their eyes, using nuclear bombs on 8 million people will only result in finding someone to take the blame. Moreover, the nuclear bomb may not be able to destroy the portal, but it will destroy New York in vain. Bang! Hulk punched hard, pushing Loki, who was fighting Miss Jane, into the building. Loki stood up and roared angrily, Enough! You humble human beings, I tell you, I am a god. You don't want to humiliate me again. Before he finished speaking, Hulk, who was already impatient, grabbed one of his legs and started beating him to death on the ground, 3 times to the left and 3 times to the right, twisting his neck and buttocks. After a brutal ravage, Hulk threw Loki on the ground contentedly, and took a sip, weak chicken god. Loki lay on the ground with a face full of lovelessness, the blue light in his eyes slowly dissipating. It seems that the brain has been beaten. There are more and more Chirrida legions in the sky, seemingly endless. Numerous Kiruda soldiers flying fighter planes fired wildly at all places. Even if it is as strong as Hulk, there is nothing to do. Natalia, you need to touch the Rubik's Cube with this scepter to close the portal. I will cover you and tear a hole for you. Thor shouted to Natalia beside him. A huge amount of lightning scattered countless branches in the sky, and wiped out the Chiruta fighter in a short time, and the pressure on the Avengers was relieved. Natalia picked up the scepter and quickly ran to the roof. Thor closed his eyes, and after brewing for a few seconds, a thunderbolt several hundred meters thick and the most powerful in history focused in the air to a thickness of a few centimeters before hitting the Tesseract's barrier. Boom! Amidst the loud noise, a crack that was only as wide as one person appeared in the impenetrable barrier, and it shrank rapidly. Natalia rolled over, jumped into the barrier, lifted the scepter, and was about to put it on the Tesseract. Wait! Stark yelled anxiously. There are more and more enemies. The later you close the portal, the greater the loss. Captain America reminded. I know, but I have a nuclear bomb here. If it explodes in New York, the whole New York will be over. Stark carried the nuclear bomb and rushed over without hesitation. A few minutes ago, the flight crew on the space carrier received a message. Commander Fury has been deprived of authority, acting as an Order 7A11. 7A11 has been confirmed and is ready to take off. Sir, there is an abnormality on the deck, a plane took off illegally. Maria Hill looked anxious. She guessed the reason for the plane to take off, and shouted into the communicator, the takeoff has not been approved, stop immediately. Attention everyone, stop that plane. Nick Fury knew that the council had bypassed him and gave the order, and he took a bazooka and rushed up to the deck, and the Japanese cannon hit the wing. Just when he breathed a sigh of relief, another plane rushed off the runway and took off, and there was no time to stop it. Nick Fury threw the rocket launcher in his hand angrily, and picked up the communicator. Stark, can you hear me? A plane carrying a nuclear bomb is flying towards New York, and it will arrive in about 3 minutes. Stark was shocked. New York is in chaos now. Once the nuclear bomb explodes, it will at least cause millions of deaths and injuries. He didn't care about entanglement with the miscellaneous soldiers, input all the energy into the propeller, and met the nuclear bomb flying in the distance. Those idiots in the council actually dropped nuclear bombs on their own people. Natalia couldn't help but cursed. Leave it to me, I have experience in space. Thor knows that it is very risky for Stark to send a nuclear bomb into the portal. Although the original work is successful, no one can guarantee that he will come back alive this time. He pushed Stark away, took the nuke, and rushed towards the portal. Natalia, close the portal immediately. Natalia was stunned for a moment, then shouted in random horror, no, I'll wait for you to come back. Idiot, the nuclear bomb can't hurt me, and I can use space magic, so I can come back immediately no matter where I am. Shut down immediately to prevent nuclear shock and radiation from affecting the city. Believe your highness, he once fought his way through my father's headquarters. Xing Yun, who arrived at an unknown time, said. She is the one who knows Thor's strength best, and the person who can make a big fuss in Holy Place number 2 and walk away is definitely not something that a nuclear bomb or a mere Kurita can handle. Natalia gritted her teeth and shouted, come back alive. Then she ruthlessly hit the authority on the Rubik's Cube. There was a loud noise in the sky, and huge amounts of the portal began to slowly close. Thor rushed through the portal and disappeared into the air. After a few seconds, the portal completely disappeared. Carrying the nuclear bomb, he rushed to the Chirita mothership, stopped at the front, and sneered at the terrified Zarita commander in the cabin behind the glass. Thank Thanos for sending me the mind gem. Oh, you have no chance. A bolt of lightning shattered the glass of the cabin and sent the nuclear bomb in. A golden halo appeared behind him, and the whole person disappeared into it. On Earth, the members of the Avengers are fighting to resist the constantly steady Chirita army. In addition to the Avengers team, Nebula, Minerva, War Machine Rhodes, Falcon, Sam Wilson and others have all joined the battlefield, and the situation is precarious. Suddenly, the Leviathan giant Coon in the air seemed to lose control in an instant, and fell heavily. At the same time, Chirita soldiers also fell one by one. No, Thor hasn't come back yet. Natalia exclaimed suddenly, and everyone else became nervous. I should have gone. Stark stamped his feet, and Steve and the others also had complex expressions. I'm going to ask, who launched the nuclear bomb? Natalia had a murderous look on her face, and Black Widow's aura was fully revealed. Wait a minute, Mjolnir told me that Thor is fine. Miss Jane stopped Natalia. As old partners for thousands of years, there is a connection between them. The Avengers breathed a sigh of relief. Nick Fury on the helicarrier was also relieved to see the nuclear bomb sent into the portal and the Kurita fell. He secretly made up his mind that these cold-blooded politicians must not let the Avengers be controlled, otherwise it will only bring greater disaster. I'd like a glass of wine, if I may. In the office of the Stark building, Loki, who regained his sanity, surrendered to the Avengers, and he was used to it anyway. The elevator door opened, and a team of commandos came in, and the leader, Sitwell, said, "Give us the scepter, and we will keep it safe." Natalia squinted her eyes, but still gave him the scepter. Although she knew he was not a good person, it was not the time to turn her face. Attention, this thing is very dangerous, it was controlled by it. Sitwell nodded. I'll keep an eye out. As for the Tesseract, your chief has agreed to hand it over to me. Thor's voice came from behind. Sorry, I'm late. Thor's space teleportation level is limited, and the ultra-long-distance teleportation has some deviations, and it actually teleported to the edge of the solar system, so it took more time. 0. Speaking of which, if it wasn't for a divine body like myself, ordinary magicians wouldn't dare to engage in interstellar teleportation without being sure, not to mention accidentally running on the sun. The vacuum environment alone can make most crispy magicians kneel. Thor grabbed the Tesseract up and looked at it. Sitwell was stunned, and a random group of people raised their guns and aimed at Thor. Put down the Tesseract. This is the property of S.H.I.E.L.D. Thor sneered. Just kidding, my father put Tesseract on the Earth for thousands of years to prevent the energy from being abused. When did it become your shield thing? Sitwell agent, put down the gun, Thor is not the enemy. Natalia shouted. Stark also raised his palm, and the laser cannon was ready to go. This is my territory, I suggest you don't be impulsive. At this time, Nick Fury's voice came from the communicator, put down the gun. The Tesseract belongs to Asgard. However, Secretary Pierce said. Now I'm the director. Sitwell hesitated for a while, put down the gun with a black face. On the helicarrier, Nick Fury explained to Hill and others beside him, not to mention that I promised him, the energy of the Tesseract is originally too dangerous and can easily attract the attention of evil forces. Earth is not ready for high-level war. In a dark corner of the universe, a gloomy voice sounded. Earthlings are not as weak as we imagined. They're tough, they're rebellious, and it's hard for them to be ruled by others. Most importantly, that bloody Asgardian is helping Earth. He's offended us more than once. Wong sat up, and a burly figure turned around slowly, with a cruel smile on his purple-like face. He won't have a chance to be arrogant again soon. Odin is getting old. When Odin is gone, he will pay for what he did. According to the information sent this time, it seems that the traitor Xing Yun is also on Earth. Let her go, she will pay the price for her betrayal back then. Cheers. Having won this tough battle, the Avengers need to relax. Originally, Stark proposed to go to a nearby barbecue restaurant, but under Thor's strong opposition, the meeting place was transferred to the banquet hall of Stark Building. Because Thor knew that the barbecue restaurant was actually very bad. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking Loki back to be judged by Asgard. What's next for everyone? Thor asked. Oh, I'm leaving again, what can I do? I can only cry secretly. The widow pretended to wipe her tears, and her tone was full of resentment. Really cheated by her. Come on, who doesn't know that you are the famous Black Widow, so don't pretend to be a little woman. Thor laughed and complained, and Natalia gave Natalia a blank look. There's a very interesting celestial phenomenon recently. I can take the time to study it carefully after you leave. Miss Gien muttered while resting her chin, her tone a little excited. Recently, I have been trained by Thor every day, and my own research time is gone. I promised Pepper, after this time, take off the armor and spend some time with her. Thor thought of something, and asked, haven't you thought about taking out the shrapnel in your body? Although the reactor can also sustain life, it will consume more energy for the armor function at the same time. Do you plan to carry it for a lifetime? Stark smiled wryly and shook his head. I've thought about it, but I have a lot of shrapnel in my body and it's finely fragmented, so it's very difficult to take it out. Because of my identity, many doctors dare not take risks. Not to mention the famous Iron Man, the whole American, the status of the richest man makes most doctors dare not use the knife. What a surprise, it's over for a lifetime. Thor thought for a while, and said uncertainly, you need the best surgeon. Maybe, I have a candidate. He picked up his cell phone and dialed a number. Hi, is that Dr. Palmer? I am, are you? Thor, a timid female voice came from the phone. It's me, I want to inquire, is there a surgeon named Strange in your hospital? You're talking about Dr. Stephen Strange. He was transferred recently. His surgical skills are the highest in our hospital, but he's not well known at the moment. How do you know him? It's not important. What's important is that I have a chance to make him famous. If he succeeds, he will be famous all over the world. May I ask who it is? Dr. Palmer was a little curious. To reach the level that Thor said, the difficult operation is the second, and more importantly, the object of the operation must be famous enough. Tony Stark, the famous Iron Man, is he famous enough? After hanging up the phone, Stark asked curiously, what's the name of the doctor you're talking about? Legend of shit. Why haven't I heard of it? Is it reliable? Thor laughs. Believe me, if he can't do it, there's no one in the world who can do it. But that guy has a bad temper, and his personality is very annoying, just like you before, but he is not as easy to talk to as I am. Thor added. No, when did I lose my temper? And are you sure you are easy to talk to? When Jane Foster was in a coma, she had gone to that Dr. Palmer. At that time, Thor just thought that the other party was very beautiful, but didn't take it to heart. Later, when the other party left, he handed him a business card, and Thor saw his full name, Christine Palmer. The name may not be very famous, but she has a very good colleague, Stephen Strange, a good boy who watched 14 million movies without spoilers, and the magician who made himself drink unlimited beer, Bald Chang's appointed successor, the famous Doctor Strange. Leaving aside the future path of magic, Shi Xuanqi's medical attainments are no worse than magic abilities. Even War Machine Rhodes, who suffered a burst fracture of his thoracic vertebrae in the future due to the flameout of his armor, is just a mere human in his eyes. It's a trivial surgery. In the middle of the night, everyone who was full of wine and food turned on the TV and watched today's news. Although this episode was confirmed as an alien invasion that caused huge amounts of losses, this group of superheroes known as Avengers is not only a relief to many people, but also a reason to celebrate. It's great to have them here. The host happily talked about his views, and then the video switched to interviews with the masses. "I love you, Thor," a blonde hottie yelled into the camera. Thor's expression was a bit embarrassing, and he whispered, "I'm not a casual person." Suddenly, he received a burst of contemptuous gazes. "Oh my God, I met Captain America. I want to marry him." Steve was also embarrassed. His true love is Bucky. Do you know, at that time we were all desperate. A Hulk appeared at the critical moment. Oh my God, he is so handsome when he fights monsters, full of violent aesthetics. I always thought it was a monster before. I for mine apologies for the misunderstanding. The Hulk is a hero. Bruce Banner froze for a moment. He clearly felt the Hulk in his body excited. These so-called superheroes are responsible for the damage this city has suffered. They caused it, but what about their people? They pat their butts and walk away. I suggest that they be put on trial. A congressman's sharp speech attracted everyone's attention. Stark and Steve fell silent. A gleam flashed in Thor's eyes. Chapter 71. Yeah, I always feel that these so-called heroes are unreliable, and it's best to supervise them. I don't want to pin our safety on the character and morality of a few people. Another middle-aged man with a big belly said, which seemed to have aroused a lot of sympathy. This person should also be a little famous. Natalia, look up the names of the congressman and the fat man, as well as other basic information. W. Everyone present was startled. Steve quickly dissuaded him. Thor, don't be impulsive. Yeah, there are more than 300 million people in the United States, and there are not a few idiots. Do you think you are living in heaven? Thor smiled and shook his head, indicating that they don't have to worry. What are you thinking? I just put this guy on the blacklist. If there is any world crisis in the future, I don't need to worry about these guys and their families. Then he sneered. Anyway, they don't believe in the Avengers, so go ahead and trust the politicians who threw nuclear bombs at them. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Only Thor looked a little playful, and there were more than a few idiots. This idiot congressman deliberately planted hidden dangers for Avengers and deliberately incited the emotions of the public. It was obviously used as a gun for some people. The biggest characteristic of this kind of disgusting fly is that it is submissive to aliens, but it strikes hard at superheroes. Are you leaving tomorrow? It won't be decades, will it? I won't play with you anymore. Peggy Carter joked. Definitely not. If you are worried, you can go back with me. Forget it, I'm not ready yet. Peggy shook her head. By the way, do you need me for anything? I can't find you if I have nothing to do. Thor asked doubtfully. If it's okay, you will go directly to the manor. Well, this reason is really strong. Only then did Thor seriously say, have you met any particularly powerful hackers in S.H.I.E.L.D. for so many years? Definitely, you must be absolutely trustworthy. Many people in S.H.I.E.L.D. are not the same as us. Peggy Carter's face became serious. There is one hacker who is the most powerful and absolutely trustworthy. More than 20 years ago, a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. accidentally rescued a baby while performing a mission. I originally planned to send her to an orphanage, but I found that this child was a little different, so I adopted her. You know, a lonely woman always wants company. Peggy Carter gave Thor a look, and continued. Later, I found out that she has a terrifying ability in computers, so I specially asked the Agent Academy to train in this area. Although she is young, but the ability in hacking, I dare it is said that there are few in this world who can compare to her. Currently she belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh yes, she has always admired you. Speaking of this, Peggy Carter was a little bored. As a legendary hero of World War II, Thor originally had a terrifying popularity. The return of the king in recent incidents has made him the idol of many young people. Especially when Sky was a child, he often told her the story of Captain Black, which caused him to become Thor's fangirl since childhood. It's such a sad story. My God, are you Captain Black? No, it should be His Royal Highness Thor. Great, I finally see you. Late at night, in the living room of an apartment, a half-race beauty looked at Thor excitedly, her eyes full of little stars. Thor is a little confused. How is this vibe girl different from the imagined one? Sky continued. You know what, you're so handsome today. Oh, you're a savior. Stop, stop. Thor couldn't bear her enthusiasm, and quickly got to the point. I need the help of an excellent hacker, and the kind that I can trust completely, can you? Sky patted his chest. The best hacker on Earth is right in front of you. As for trust, do you think I'm someone who will betray you? She went up and grabbed one of Thor's arms with both hands, shaking, and a hint of cunning flashed in her eyes. I am not worried that you will betray me, but I am worried that you will make me make mistakes. Thor slandered. Thor pushed her hand away calmly and whispered something in her ear. Sky looked a little shocked, but she nodded anyway. Early the next morning, Thor took Loki back to God's domain. Stark was so bored that he turned on the TV and watched the news reports. Last night, he inquired about Doctor Strange. He is indeed an excellent surgeon. After making an appointment, he will be able to perform the operation this afternoon based on his relationship. Suddenly, the screen flickered, and the original normal report switched to another screen, all kinds of documents and materials. Is this bribery, gangster collusion, unknown assets, various criminal records? Stark muttered. This revenge is too cruel. At the same time, all viewers watching this TV station have seen this content. Several mainstream newspapers received a thick stack of materials in the middle of the night yesterday, all of which were the black history of a high-level congressman, and today made it into the headlines. The FBI dispatched on the same day, invited him to drink tea, and froze all his property at the same time, and his family members could not escape. In the case of overwhelming evidence, even the big boss behind it dare not reach out. In the eyes of many people, this guy is a victim of political struggle, and his life is finished. Only a few people know that this is revenge, a strong response to previous temptations, and a warning to them. In this position, few people are completely clean. It depends on whether anyone knows and has the ability to investigate. Who will tell me that these contents have been completely deleted and overwritten long ago? Why can they still be dug out? Are all the newspapers eating shit? Give them the information, and write it to the newspaper without verifying it. These guys really only have traffic in their eyes. Also, why were the backstages of the three major broadcasting companies compromised at the same time? Are their defense systems all shit? In an office in Washington, a big boss roared angrily. A programmer with glasses said with a mournful face, "Report to the speaker, according to our anti-tracking results, the address of the attacker pointed to the home of Congressman Williams. It seems that he voluntarily exposed himself." You did it, Peggy Carter asked Sky angrily. It is rare for a hacker of this level to find data that has been deleted for many years in one night, and can also paralyze the systems of the three major broadcasting companies, let alone get that special data. And there is only Sky who has this motive. Sky smiled sheepishly, and nodded. I didn't fabricate the facts, these contents are all true. Besides, this guy is not a good person, and it would be cheap to spend a lifetime in jail, him. Peggy's expression became serious. It's no big deal to bring down a congressman who was originally problematic. But, have you thought about the other information? Once released, it will cause turmoil in the world. Sky shrugged. It's not time to make it public. He said he hoped to never use it. Then when will it be made public? Sky coughed lightly. The following is a paraphrase of His Highness Thor's original words. He raised his voice, in the tone of Rubik's Cube Thor. Politicians will always only consider their own interests. Just like S.H.I.E.L.D., they will reach out to superheroes sooner or later. This time it is just a temptation. In fact, there is not enough ability to suppress us. At that time, what they are most likely to do is to incite the people by various means, and use the emotions of the people to carry out moral kidnapping. On that day, I will tear off their disguise and let everyone see their faces clearly. Dear, understand yet? Peggy Carter said with a dark face. You don't need to repeat the last sentence. Oh, I added that last sentence myself. Peggy Carter fell silent, thinking about the words. After a long time, she smiled wryly and nodded. You really make it difficult for me. Forget it, I've retired anyway. It's okay to be a gun for others, but it's a problem if you provoke me anyway. A group of soldiers locked Loki and walked towards the hall, while Thor was talking on the side. It's also because this guy's own butt is not clean, otherwise it would be really hard to touch him. Loki couldn't help complaining. As far as I know, even if there is no problem, you will find him a problem. Don't talk nonsense, I'm a good law-abiding citizen. You are definitely the one to do this kind of thing, for example, pretending to be him and running to the White House. Loki is a bit pained. Why is there someone more brazen than me in the world? Frigga walked over and looked at Luigi with a worried face. Mother, Loki blurted out, then reacted, and changed his mind to an expression of indifference. Are you proud of me? Frigga's face became more worried. Don't add fuel to the fire, your father is very angry now. Just as Loki was about to speak, Odin's voice came from the king's seat. Okay, let me talk to him. Why? Turning to Loki, he said in a deep voice, don't you really know that you have sinned deeply? There is nothing to say. Wherever you are, there will be destruction and death. And I, as a benevolent god, future to Midgard to rule the people of the earth. I can prove that I am truly born to be king. Odin sighed. All this stems from your desire for the throne. No, this is the power I deserve. Loki's voice suddenly became louder. Enough. Odin was furious, and he roared, the right you deserve is death. Died in infancy, abandoned on a cold rock. If Frigg hadn't pity you, you would have died long ago. Since this is the case, you will give me death now. No, you will never see Frigga again, I will let you stay in dungeon forever. And Thor, he shall be king. Odin waved his hand, and the guards took him down. On the balcony, Thor overlooked everything that was bustling below. When the disaster strikes a few years later, if you can't resist the past, all this will disappear. Can you tell me about her? Odin suddenly walked up to him. Yes, but which one are you talking about? Odin's mouth twitched. In fact, Thor's behavior is not a problem in the eyes of the Asgard people. Even Odin has had 3 wives, but only Frigga went to the end. Mainly, Thor has been obsessed with hammers for 1,000 years, until he suddenly became enlightened in the last few years. And it may be because of the depression for too long that it got out of hand. Considering the lifespan and time concept of the Asgard people, it's like taking a nap, a lot of daughter-in-laws are already. If it wasn't for the fact that Frigga, who is a witch, didn't notice anything unusual, he even suspected that his son was being possessed other's body. The only consolation is that my favorite Sif has not waited in vain for so many years. That, the mortal who took Mjolnir. Of course he was talking about Jane Foster. As for Natalia, it was just that her character was recognized by Mjolnir, and she was allowed to use part of the power of thunder. Once the hammer leaves, it turns back into a mortal again. But Jane is different. Now she is the new Thor, a real god with a godhead. She and Mjolnir have a high degree of compatibility, even surpassing you. Odin said solemnly. The reason why she can lift Mjolnir is not because of my curse, but is truly recognized by Mjolnir. I even have a feeling that even if I can't lift a hammer one day, that girl can still do it. Thor nodded silently. He already knew that Jane had great potential, but he didn't expect to get such a high evaluation from Odin. He pondered for a while, and said, yes, a long time ago, I had a feeling that Mjolnir is not really my god-king weapon, it just helps me use my power better and makes me more focused. As an artifact of the same level as Kungunir should not be so ordinary. My gut told me Mjolnir's answer was in Midgard. So I left it on Earth until Jane held it up, and she didn't let me down. Odin nodded and patted him on the shoulder. Although I don't want the future god king to fall in love with a human being, I have to say that you have a good eye. Thor was a little surprised by Odin's attitude. You know, in the original history, Odin strongly opposed Thor and Jane Foster being together, and even tried to obstruct it in various ways. Odin saw his doubts, and said with a light smile, the lifespan of human beings cannot be compared with that of Asgardians. Even the most common Shenu people have a lifespan of more than 5,000 years, while mortals can live up to 100 years. Asgards have never lived an example of combining with mortals, but it has always been endless loneliness after decades of joy. So, I don't want this to happen to the future God King. And now, although I don't know why, you seem to have solved this problem, and the shackles of their lifespan have been untied. Thor nodded. Most importantly, Ragnarok is not far away. On that day, this country that countless people yearn for will face catastrophe. A new Thor will bring very huge amounts of help. Surprised, Thor immediately retorted, "No, Ragnarok won't happen." Odin shook his head. "The future is not static. I know that you rely on your own efforts to change many things. But Ragnarok was predicted thousands of years ago. Do you know what that means?" Thor murmured, "Meaning, it's harder to change it." Odin nodded. "Your mother has predicted many times. Although the endings are different, in every future, Sudert will be reborn in flames. Even if you don't do it, this moment will appear." Thor's face was a little dignified. Odin's meaning is obvious. He knows that he basically does not need to use Ragnarok against Hela but still may have God Yellow for other reasons. On Earth, in a major conference room, several military and political leaders are having heated discussions. "This is provocation. This is an act of contempt for the law. I propose that everyone in the Trudheim Manor be arrested immediately," a white-bearded member of the council said sternly. Ahem. Nick Fury coughed beside him. As S.H.I.E.L.D. director, he is also eligible to attend the conference. "First of all, there is no evidence pointing to them. Everything at present is just our speculation. Moreover, you have to consider the consequences of doing so. There is more than one god in Trudheim Manor. Even if Thor is not on the earth now, according to our routine it is difficult for the army to pose a threat to them. Unless..." Nick Fury glanced at everyone with a sneer on his face. "Drop another nuclear bomb at New York." The hall fell into silence. "We have Captain America too. The comrades who were born and died decades ago, even if they help, it's not helping you. We have the Hulk. I'm looking forward to your friendly exchange with the Hulk. We still have Iron Man. Stark is lying in the hospital right now. Mr. Stark, how are you feeling now?" Happy and Pepper asked Stark, who was lying on the hospital bed with concern. "Very good. I feel lighter than ever. I can finally get a good night's sleep tonight. Did you have any regrets when you removed the reactor?" "Definitely not. Reactor or not, armor or not, I'm Iron Man." "Excuse me, the doctor makes rounds." An emotionless voice thought, interrupting Stark's act. Stark snorted. "Although this Doctor Strange is indeed highly skilled in medicine, he has a weird personality and is really as annoying as Thor said. On the outside, you are a billionaire, a philanthropist, a great inventor, and Iron Man, but in the hospital, you are just my patient, and you must listen to me in everything." Who is Stark? Even in the face of Thor, he has never been cowardly, and he will fight back when he is bullied. But the cold reactor in his chest told him that his life was still in other people's hands, and Stark had no choice but to be cowardly. "I thought it would be enough after the operation was over, but the other party asked me to stay in the hospital for recuperation and observation for half a month. The key point is that Little Pepper is completely on the opponent's side. In fact, Strange was worried that this guy would disobey the doctor's orders and commit suicide, and if something happened, his reputation would be affected. By the way, what happened to the media fishing boat outside? What do the public think of us?" Stark suddenly asked Happy. Happy is a big fat man with a happy face. He thought for a while and said, "Most of them expressed their gratitude. They think you are the heroes who saved the world. But some people think that the Avengers should be responsible for the loss of New York. At least partly responsible." "Alas," Stark sighed, "make up for the badly damaged citizens as much as possible, they are all innocent." Actually, Xiaojiao pondered for a while, and whispered, "None of the parties has the obligation to compensate for the losses caused by the war. Even if it is compensation, the government will come forward to provide humanitarian subsidies." A talented student like Stark would definitely not understand this truth. He shook his head. "I knew this at the time, so I thought it was charity. Anyway, Stark Industry is not short of money. Since returning from Afghanistan, Stark has always had great empathy for the victims of those wars." After learning of Stark's actions, Thor, who had just returned to Earth, sighed. "What's the matter?" Peggy Carter beside her asked with some doubts. "Isn't it great that someone is willing to take responsibility?" Thor shook his head. "Yes, he did a good job. Stark definitely knew that he was not obliged to pay compensation, but he still tried his best. However, many people would not think so. Even if he did a good job, people will only think that this is what he should do. Although Stark Industry is rich, it has not yet reached the point where it can settle the losses of the entire New York. And the Great War in New York won't be the last Star Wars. Quote, personally, he did a good thing and took responsibility that he didn't need to bear. It seemed to save the reputation of the Avengers. But in the big picture, this behavior created an illusion that the Avengers should fight for the confrontation. The damage caused by evil will pay the bill. In fact, he only needs to provide basic living allowances to those at the bottom who have nowhere to go and can't even get relief money. And this is the job of Washington. Doomy raises kindness, raises rice to raise hatred. Never underestimate the greed of human nature. After listening to him quietly, Peggy Carter was stunned for a while before sighing, "Your words are really cruel." Intellectually, she still agrees with Thor. Thor shook his head. "It's not that I'm cruel. In my opinion, as long as it doesn't betray the human position, superheroes should not have any constraints, so that it can develop better. Compared with that loss, the Earth will be destroyed in a few years. There will be a real catastrophe, and if it cannot be overcome, at least 3.5 billion people will be reduced to ashes. The worst result is that the other half will perish. No one can guarantee that Thanos will only be half destroyed in the end. What if the policy is changed in advance? In the face of the crisis of destroying the world, I don't want anyone to hold me back, and I don't want those who are protected to still suck blood from behind. That's why you asked Sky to get you this information as a trump card." Thor nodded. Although fists are more useful than reasoning, it is quite annoying for a group of people to kidnap Dao Dao all day long. I will publish this information at the most appropriate time, so that we can get revenge before the ultimate war comes. Those who can fight without any worries. Well, I believe in you and will do everything well. Here, this is another document you asked for. This is the only one. You have to keep it safe. Also, don't reveal that I gave it to you. Sky handed over a USB flash drive. Thor. Anyway, she is also a member of S.H.I.E.L.D., and helping Thor to do this kind of thing is actually a betrayal of S.H.I.E.L.D. But since the founder Carter didn't object, then there's nothing wrong. Sky thought to himself. Thor took the USB flash drive, nodded with satisfaction, and thanks, if there is anything that needs my help, I will try my best to help. Sky rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Okay, I haven't tried what it's like to have a boyfriend at my age, so please do me a favor. Learn to tease me at a young age." Thor was overjoyed and hugged her. "Okay, I'll take you home tonight." "Ah," Sky screamed, struggled quickly, and said insincerely with a blushing face, forget it, I'm afraid that Auntie will kill me." Thor gave this coward a contemptuous look. "Don't dare to do it, cowardly." Sky glared. "Old antiques from decades ago eat tender grass, scum." Sky suddenly felt a broken idol image. Although the little girl was a little funny, but after all, she helped him a lot. Thor took a communicator and handed it to her. "This one has been modified. When there is a problem that can't be solved, press the communication button, and I can receive it within 2 galaxies. There are not many things in this world that I can't do." Sky had an expression of, "I believe in you, then I want to be a superhero, can you help me too?" "That's not certain," Thor said meaningfully. Sky was stunned for a moment, and his face instantly became excited. "Really? Tell me quickly, what is my super ability? How can I awakening? Hell, are agents so sensitive?" In fact, he didn't know much about Sky's situation, and he wasn't very familiar with the S.H.I.E.L.D. series in his previous life, so he had to muddle along. He tapped his index finger on Sky's smooth forehead. "What kind of super ability do you want? Haven't you heard of it? The poor rely on mutation, and the rich rely on technology. Are you poor?" Sky was confused. "Do you know Iron Man? He is just an ordinary person, and now he is not as good as the well-known superhero. When are you going to ask him for a battle armor? Are you a superhero?" Sky suddenly looked disappointed. "Forget it, that guy is a baby of his armor, and it won't work for anyone. Besides, his armor operation can't be played without relevant skills. Look at Rhodes, just turned the steel armor into a humanoid fighter." Thor showed a smile. "She was on point. Stark's Iron Man, All kinds of weapons are full of imagination, all kinds of laser cannons, and in the future, there will be various weapons composed of nanometal elements. As for War Machine Rhodes, his combat style is actually not much different from that of a multi-function fighter. It is either a machine gun or a missile, and the replacement is only equipped with various conventional weapons. Compared with Iron Man, it is far behind. Not to mention the more and more weird functions of the Iron Man armor: refrigeration, drying, urine purification. Ah, big shit, are you going to pee and drink it directly into your mouth? To sum up, Iron Man's armor evolution route is Mk2, Mk3, Mk4. The evolution route of War Machine is Mk2, Mk2 change, Mk2 change again, Mk2 magic change. The later anti-Hulk armor is also, Stark's control of anti-Hulk is enough to suppress the Hulk. But in the hands of Bruce Banner, he became a tough guy who could stumble while walking. Skye took the communicator and left contentedly. Then Thor got a call from her in the middle of the night. Bang, bang. Looking at the two large human-shaped holes on the roof and the floor of the second floor, Skye's eyes straightened. I just want to try the effect, why don't you come in? Skye wanted to cry but had no tears. She knows that Thor is fast, wearing pajamas too late to wear such things does not exist. The problem is, how many years did my mother spend saving to decorate the house? Oh, I was just worried that you were in danger, so I rushed here at the first time, and I didn't have time to knock on the door. Thor is serious. Try the effect. Zhou Yuang said that Lao Tzu's Fengwo drama princes also tried the effect. The more beautiful a woman is, the more she will deceive people. The ancients never deceived me. I must teach a lesson to suppress this kind of atmosphere. Seeing Thor's appearance, Skye didn't know what to do, and kept silent with a mournful face. In fact, after a short time with her, she has discovered that Thor is by no means as decent as he appears on the surface. If she continues to complain about the hole in the roof, Thor will most likely take the opportunity to invite her to Manor 1. In the dark room, a deep voice sounded. I'm afraid the plan will be implemented ahead of schedule. A frantic voice rang out. Hydra hail. This is no longer a world where politicians can decide everything. Pierce's plan only works on mortals, and it's up to them to wipe out ordinary enemies. To fight against the so-called gods, only those with the same super ability can do it. Let's start the great experiment now. It doesn't matter if you fail. I have issued a notice for volunteers. We have no shortage of experimental products. The bodies of those who failed the experiment will not be left behind. And as long as someone can succeed, the revenge the ones will have nothing to worry about. This is an age of miracles, and nothing can be more terrifying than miracles. A display screen in the room is playing the scene of Thor pointing at the sky and thunder pouring down from the sky. On the other side of the room, a mysterious scepter is placed on the shelf, and the head of the scepter is a gemstone emitting dark blue light. Outside Sokovia's base, a man and a woman walked over supporting each other. Pietro, are we really going in? Well, only in this way can there be hope for revenge. Actually, I don't really care about revenge, as long as we are all safe. Wanda, you are too soft-hearted. The impact of the New York war is huge amounts of, and the first thing that bears the brunt is that superhero really came into people's sight. Laser weapons, aliens, these words, people wake up, it turns out that these are real. Even the existence of magic, many people began to accept. Except for a very small number of staunch atheists. Stephen Strange is one of them. The so-called Thor is an ordinary person with a special constitution. It's just an ordinary discharge phenomenon, can't electric eels do it too? The so-called magic and the power of faith do not exist, they are just some phenomena that have not been explained by science. There is no spiritual power at all, and human beings are just, night and night. But, I'm not human. Thor spread his hands. He didn't know which nerve was wrong, and he had nothing to do to debate with the future Doctor Strange. He was really free recently. Miss Jane went out to relax for a while, and started astronomical research again. And Natalia is busy with things, it is impossible to accompany him all day long. Steve could, but lately he's been picking up on the knowledge of the times. Moreover, the simple sparring without divine power actually improves slowly. Gila is a good choice, but that grandpa is too moody. If you are in a good mood, you are the elder sister. If you are in a bad mood, you are the mother wrong. The little needle pokes your chest. Strange was choked by Thor, and then reacted. No, not only humans, aliens are also material, you just have stronger physiques, longer lifespans, and some magical abilities. Within the scope of science, if modern humans appeared in the Middle Ages, they would also be regarded as gods. Two boring people. Christine Palmer couldn't help frowning, and Nebula and Minerva nodded at the same time. Stark's operation was performed by Strange, and she was the second in command. After the successful operation, both became famous. They definitely knew that without Thor, Stark would not have trusted them so easily, so they came to the door to thank them. Thor was about to refute, when a system voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Drip, congratulations to the host for triggering Doctor Strange's exclusive mission, Mysterious Realm. The future Doctor Strange is now a staunch materialist. Shake his mind, and he accepts this mysterious world. Mission objective: to show Strange a phenomenon that completely conflicts with scientific ideas. Mission reward: skill, Soul Astral. Soul Astral, passive effect: the soul can be separated from the body. After the separation, the soul is physically immune and unable to launch physical attacks, but it will suffer soul damage and magic attacks. Active effect: concentrate, slap the opponent's chest, and push his soul out of the body. When the opponent resists, the success rate and effect duration will change the opponent's determination. Soul Astral, this is a very powerful skill. Haven't you seen the Hulk Master of Ancient One? The disadvantage is that it requires close quarters and requires concentration. It is generally suitable for dealing with some particularly rough-skinned and thick-skinned enemies. As for the way to complete the task, Pure Thunder will definitely not work. Shishwanshi has already determined that he is of the same nature as the electric eel. Mr. Strange, I will let you understand how small the world you see is. He stretched out his hand and gestured, and then a golden circle appeared under Strange, who was puzzled, and fell down with a plop. What happened? A big change. Christine Palmer looked confused. It's nothing, it's just a free fall. Don't worry, the limit speed of a person's free fall on the Earth is about 50 meters per second, and it won't make him burn. It suddenly occurred to him that Doctor Strange had also used this trick on Loki, and the effect was great. Miss Palmer, are you interested in working in my research center? Maya and Betty need an assistant with a lot of medical knowledge. Thor happily dug the corner, but at this moment Strange was forced. He was still in the living room just now, and suddenly he found himself hundreds of meters high in the air, with a snow mountain below. Ah! Just when he thought he was going to fall to his death, a golden halo of sparks appeared in front of his eyes. In the next moment, he found, how about money, that he was back at an altitude of several hundred meters. The distance was reset, but the falling speed was not reset. Under the action of gravity, he fell at a faster speed. Even more tragically, he's no Loki, with no more than mortal physical ability to sustain a mid-puff sound. At the beginning, he could still bark, but when his speed reached a certain level, he opened his mouth and found that the cold wind kept pouring into his mouth, which bulged his mouth into a big hole, and he wanted to close it. It's all gone. He felt like his mouth was turning into a Plant vs. Zombie pea shooter. Kamar Taj, Ancient One sighed, waved his hand, and put a halo on Strange to prevent him from being killed. Although it is a good thing to let one's successor get in touch with the mystery in advance, it can't let him be played to death. Drip. Congratulations to the host for completing the task related to Doctor Strange, Mysterious Domain, and getting the reward, skill, Soul Astral. The free fall lasted for about 10 minutes, and Thor heard the sound of the system completing the task. He waved his hand in satisfaction, and Strange's falling speed began to slow down. A few seconds later, it fell to the floor with a plop. Seeing this miserable appearance, Thor felt a little sorry. Ah, should there be? Strange gasped for a few breaths, and said hopelessly, I've been in free fall for 10 minutes. It took only 10 minutes for this kind of virtue, far from Loki's. It's really scary. I always thought that bungee jumping was scary enough. Strange still complained with lingering fear, don't you have something less exciting? Yes. Thor slapped his chest, and then a translucent Strange flew out of his body. This time, not only him, but everyone else in the living room was shocked. Oh, is this the soul? The soul state didn't last long. Strange returned to his body after a few seconds. The time for the soul to leave the body is related to willpower. It must be said that Doctor Strange's willpower is really excellent, and he can recover in just a few seconds. Only with this kind of firm will can you defeat Dormammu with such a brutal method. I'm beginning to doubt the education I've received over the years. Strange sighed. There is no need to completely deny it. Thor patted him on the shoulder. In the world of advanced civilizations, science and mystery are originally interconnected. Christine Palmer didn't agree to jump ship right away. She still needs to think about it. After all, she has only met Thor twice, and she seriously suspects that Thor actually wants to keep her in the manor. Thor didn't care about this either. In fact, he didn't care much about the development of the research center. He just wanted to stop it as a girl's career hobby. Sir, please allow me to introduce the new project of S.H.I.E.L.D. Since the appearance of Iron Man, various crises have emerged one after another in the past few years. The Abomination, the Iron Man, and even the aliens in the New York War have caused too much damage to my people. Harm. Yes, we have Avengers, but Avengers can only be repaired after the fact. What we need is to prevent this. Alexander Pierce was speaking to the council. Even the Avengers can't cook to prevent the crisis, what else can you do? A female congressman said. Insight plan. By monitoring the whole world, find all hazards during the incubation period, and bring the whole world into view. Minister Pierce, please explain in detail. The Zola algorithm left by Dr. Zola, through precise calculations, screens out all those who cause harm to this world, and destroys them before they take action, instead of waiting for the disaster to happen before looking for the Avengers. Pierce's description seems to be very good, but the council still has doubts. After all, doing so will inevitably lead to panic. Moreover, they doubted the reliability of Zola's algorithm. We can't give you an answer right away, hope you understand. Walking out of the hall, the pity on Pierce's face instantly disappeared, replaced by a gloomy expression. He picked up his cell phone and dialed an unremarked number. Since you still need to think about it, add more fire. Alexander Pierce, the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., single-handedly promoted Nick Fury and let him take over as director. After retiring, he did not leave S.H.I.E.L.D., but continued to contribute to it as a veteran figure. No one would think that such a person, the real identity is actually Hydra. Originally, he was not so anxious about the Insight plan, but Thor's strength made him feel threatened. What worries him even more is that Thor and Peggy Carter have a close relationship. If he wants to control S.H.I.E.L.D., he can push Peggy Carter back to the fore at any time. A few days later, a news alarmed the council. A secret ship of S.H.I.E.L.D. was hijacked by pirates, and even the high-level agent Sitwell became a hostage. Fortunately, Captain America and Black Widow dispatched in time, wiped out the pirates and regained the ship. Everything was safe and sound. Even so, this incident was like a slap in the face of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was also slapped in the face of the Security Council, which was furious. It's not right. Natalia analyzed her opinion to Thor. Although they have enough motivation and strength, being able to hijack this secret ship shows that they have buried a chess piece with a high status inside S.H.I.E.L.D., which could have played a greater role. And, this time, Steve and I seem to be going too well. Quote. It's normal. It's not bad to have reached this level in a hastily arranged game. Thor smiled lightly. For some reason, this plot happened a year ahead of schedule, and the other party was not ready yet. 0. A bureau. You mean, this is a scene directed and acted by Sitwell's agent? What is his purpose? Natalia had heard Thor say that Sitwell had a problem, and she suspected him the 10th time. Sitwell, it's just a pawn, not worthy of being a game setter. Get ready, S.H.I.E.L.D. is about to change. Is it finally time to find out Hydra? Then what should I do? Natalia became excited. How to do the work of an agent. You are more familiar with me, do you want me to teach you? Oh, yes, any form of beauty tricks is prohibited. Thor remembered that in the original plot, Natalia and Captain America were quite different. Eye to eye, even though history has changed now, he still reminded me. Are you sick? Natalia glared at Thor and waved the magic bracelet on her hand. Except for you, everyone who regards me as a woman regrets it. It can grow into a forest. Through these 3 brand new space carriers, we can use satellites to read out the enemy's DNA before he acts, and attack him first. Before the criminal commits a crime, he will be arrested first. Nick Fury introducing the Insight Project to Steve. According to the law, shouldn't one be guilty first and then punished? Steve raised an objection. Captain America is a bit confused, and there is such an operation. What do you think about the Insight plan? I think some concepts are actually very desirable, but they may have great side effects. In Trudheim Manor, Sharon Carter was testing Thor's opinion. Once this plan is implemented, it will inevitably bring earth-shaking changes to the world, and once it starts, there is no turning back, which makes her very confused, so she has to come to Thor to find the answer. In her eyes, Thor from a higher-level civilization should be able to see the essence of things better. To me, this is a very stupid plan. The starting point for the development of the crime prevention system is good. The key is to take measures to reduce future losses after the discovery of possible crimes. If someone is arrested or even shot dead before committing a crime, then the crime never happened, so what is he guilty of? Modern criminal law forbids the analogy of guilt. Sharon was somewhat enlightened. She continued to ask, then let me give you an example. If it is a mustache before the war, can't it be processed in advance? Thor smiled. Don't forget, mustache also rose with the support of the Germans. If the algorithm of the Insight plan is followed, the entire Germany will be destroyed. Genocide, that's it. Sharon Carter feels a chill. Thor continued to make up his knife. Have you considered one more thing? The so-called crime prevention system, if it lacks effective control or is used improperly, it will become the umbrella of totalitarianism to stabilize the regime. Or are you sure that every insight the person in charge of the plan has no selfish intentions? Needless to say, I understand. Sharon Carter turned and left. She was going to remind Nick Fury about Insight's plan to think more about it. The conversation between Nick Fury and Steve ended badly. But after Steve left, Marinade was silent for a long time by himself. He admitted from the bottom of his heart that what Steve said made a lot of sense. Ding-ling-a-ling, the bell rang. He picked up the microphone, listened for a minute, and put it down expressionlessly. Where's Minister Pierce? In the conference room. Receive the council. Tell him that I have something important to discuss with him. I have to ask you to launch a vote to postpone the Insight plan. We still need to further confirm its safety. Nick Fury spoke righteously. What if there is something wrong with the inspection? Pierce narrowed his eyes. Then we are lucky to have found it, and the space carrier hasn't gone to the sky yet. Pierce was silent for a moment, then nodded. Okay, I said yes. You'll have to call Iron Man or Thor to my nephew's birthday party, though. Nick Fury walked out. The smile on Pierce's face disappeared immediately, and he picked up a spare phone sullenly. Not long after Nick Fury went out, he was assassinated before he got home, a masked man with metal arms. He hurried to Steve's house and sent important information to Steve, but he was assassinated by the second wave, this time with an unclear gunshot wound. Sharon Carter rushed in with a gun, looking around vigilantly. I'm going to chase the enemy. Steve left a word and rushed out. Sharon Carter called the emergency, and then noticed a mobile phone in the hand of the marinated egg, with a line on it, let Thor collect the body for me. Quote. Steve chased the killer, Winter Soldier, down the street. Originally, it was still possible for him to catch the opponent, but during another close fight, he grabbed Winter Soldier's mask, and then... Bucky. Are you Bucky? Great, you're alive. The Winter Soldier took the opportunity to put him down and disappeared into the night. Nick Fury's death hit Steve hard. He was still sad, but he was notified by Rumlow and returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. under the protection of a team of agents. Alexander Pierce made some hints and temptations to Steve, but Steve remained unmoved. Under heavy pursuit, he escaped from S.H.I.E.L.D. and joined Black Widow. Alexander took the opportunity to push Nick Fury's murder on Steve and listed him as a wanted criminal. This USB flash drive has been programmed with a special code. Once we insert it into a computer, the location will be exposed immediately. And how many minutes do we have before S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives? There is more time, because I met a very powerful hacker 2 days ago. Natalia smiled and took out the communicator. Hey, Sky, do me a favor, set my coordinates as S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. After a minute, okay, let's start reading the U-disk. They track down the former S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, and they are greeted by a demon who has been dead for many years. At the moment, S.H.I.E.L.D. has become a mess. Captain America, the symbol of the American spirit, not only became a traitor, but also sneaked into the SHIELD headquarters. They didn't know that Skye had deliberately misled them. Rumno, or Crossbones, with a dark face and a team of Hydra agents scoured the building. Clatter, a basin of water was splashed on Nick Fury. Ah! With a muffled grunt, Nick Fury woke up abruptly, and what he saw was Jier with a smile on his face. Good to see you, old friend. I should be happier if you didn't wake me up in this way. But you asked me to deal with your funeral. Why, you're glad I didn't burn you. Sharon and the others next to him laughed out loud. Tell me, why did feign death and come to me? Thor said unhappily. This bad old man is very bad. Nick Fury sighed. Since there is an assassination, the opponent will not give up, and it will be impossible to defend against. Only dead man is not assassinated. As for the reason why I came here is because this is the only place where Hydra dare not reach out. Okay, you can just pick a room in the small building next to it. But I don't live here for nothing, so I have to pay something. Nick Fury was a little embarrassed. I don't think there is anything that can catch your eyes now. Yes, for example, my manor is too deserted and I need a pet. Pet? Nick Fury was a little confused. What kind of request is this? And he, the SHIELD director, has to help. He tentatively asked. You don't want to raise pandas, do you? What are you thinking about? What I want is that orange cat. Thor was speechless. What kind of brain circuit is this guy? Orange cat. Nick Fury was taken aback for a moment, and immediately realized, you mean the Yuan Devourer. Since that sad story happened that year, Nick Fury never dared to touch cats anymore, but he still settled the Yuan Devourer properly in SHIELD, and served it with delicious food and drinks. After all, it was Captain Marvel's pet back then. Well, if I leave it to you to take care of it, I'm more at ease, and it's easy to explain when Carol comes back someday. Meow. Marinated raised his head and saw a capable woman carrying an orange cat to the yard of the manor. I just promised, and you already sent it. Nick Fury's forehead is covered with black lines. Director Nick, so you're not dead. Maria Hill was shocked. The previous SHIELD incident made her at a loss, and when she was at a loss, she received a call from Thor. If you want to know the truth, then go to that place and bring an orange cat to Trudheim Manor. Thor hung up after saying the words that made him puzzled, and then she received an address on her mobile phone. For Thor, an alien visitor, she still believed in it, so she hurried over after finding the Yuan Devourer. Unexpectedly, I saw a live marinated egg. Nick Fury explained the ins and outs to her, and Hill's face was a little dignified. So what do we do now? Hill looked at Nick, Nick looked at Thor. What am I doing? You are the director. Don't tell me you have no arrangements at all. But I always feel that you should have a better way. Braised Dan was very sure of this. There is indeed a solution, but I'm afraid you won't accept it. The space carrier probably hasn't taken off yet, so I can smash it all right now, and the matter can be resolved in less than half an hour. Simple and rude, this is very Hulk. No, this is Thor. Doing this will indeed solve the Insight plan, but it will only make Washington completely intolerable for super ability people. Hill laughed out loud, and Nick slapped his thigh annoyed. Why did he forget? This guy will never push if he can do it. In the abandoned SHIELD headquarters, Steve and Natalia walked into the hall, and three portraits came into view. Admiral Jack Thompson, the boss of World War II, Howard Stark, Tony's father, Peggy Carter, my predecessor. Natalia introduced him. I still remember when I was on the last mission, they watched me get on the plane. Unexpectedly, it was a big dream, and things were different. Steve was a little emotional. Luckily, Bucky is still alive, and though somehow turned into an enemy, he believes that Bucky was just deluded for a while. Entering the interior, in front of you is a huge amounts of old-fashioned computer with a strange shape, but it has a USB interface that does not match its age. Natalia stepped forward and inserted the USB drive into the slot in the middle. The screen flickered for a while, the program started, and then a skull-like face was slowly displayed. Steve Rogers, we meet again. Arnim Zola. I remember his voice. Steve blurted out. This is the person he will never forget for the rest of his life, the one who caused him to lose Bucky. Dr. Zola, isn't he dead? Is this a video? Natalia looked puzzled. As far as she knows, this person was a dog-headed military division under Red Skull during World War II, with many bad deeds, and was finally captured by Thor himself. Later, because of his talent and learning, he was recruited into S.H.I.E.L.D. Natalia explains to the captain what happened to Dr. Zola afterwards. I'm not a video girl. I may not be the man your man took to prison in 1945. But I'm not me. Dr. Zola's deep voice sounded. In 1972, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Science could not save my body. But my mind was worth saving, so I was stored in a 200,000-foot-long database. Dr. Zola's voice became enthusiastic. They think that I can help their careers. But I have always had my own career. The screen on the computer began to switch, showing the development of Hydra over the years. Everything has been inevitable since Dr. Zola was recruited. With the cooperation of the internal personnel, Hydra continued to insert its own personnel inside, infiltrating without knowing it. Today, Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. are just two sides of the same coin. Hydra has created a chaotic world, and people are finally ready to give up their freedom to gain safety. Once our purification process is complete, the new world order established by Hydra will be born. We won, Hydra hail. What exactly is the data in the USB flash drive? Natalia asked a key question. Zola algorithm. As for what it is used for, you don't need to know. Sorry, I was delaying time. A missile will explode here in 30 seconds. The door of the room was closed immediately, and Steve was about to rush to the sewer gully, but Natalia held her back, and a female voice sounded through the communicator. I have turned on the signal shielding. The missile will arrive at least 3 minutes late. The door lock has been unlocked. You go. Hydra people will soon find out that something is wrong. Inside the Trudheim Manor, Sky wiped the cold sweat off her brow. She had just successfully hacked into Dr. Zola's supercomputer at the last moment and took over the old S.H.I.E.L.D.'s control system. I didn't expect that the system left by a person who has been dead for decades is so terrible. Sky had lingering fears. If she hadn't relied on this high-tech computer integrated with alien technology, it would be difficult for her to succeed. Such a dangerous target, Hydra, can be recruited into S.H.I.E.L.D., too scary. Nick Fury's expression was already ugly. The infiltration of Hydra started half a century ago. How many friendly forces are there in the current S.H.I.E.L.D.? He dare not imagine. After thinking for a few seconds, he stepped aside, picked up his mobile phone and made a call. Sam, the captain needs help. Falcon is already one of the few trustworthy people. On the other hand, Sky handed Thor a USB flash drive. Here, I copied this from Dr. Zola's database, and the list of almost all Hydra members is in it. Nice job. Thor took the USB flash drive and rubbed Sky's head in satisfaction, messing up her hair. Sky suddenly looked like a little wild cat whose tail had been trampled on. He put his hands on his hips and said angrily, Miss Ben worked so hard for you. How many brain cells have died? Just one sentence. Okay, what reward do you want? Thor looked helpless. Because of Peggy Carter's relationship, Thor always treats Sky as a child habitually, but in fact she is already a big child in her 20s. Thor patted her on the shoulder, and a magical power flowed through Sky's body. Okay, the reward has been given to you. Looking at the bewildered Sky, mopping the floor said meaningfully, do you know the secret of Sister Pay's age? Now you are the same as her. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Although not many people know about Peggy Carter's youthful appearance, there are quite a few who say it, and Sky, whom she watched and grew up with, is one of them. Over the years, she asked Nuo's Zhao the reason many times, but Peggy just smiled and prevaricated. In fact, she wasn't sure at the time. Sky was surprised and delighted. It turns out that Aunt Peggy stayed young because of you. Wow, that's great. I was still sad at first, but in a few years I'll be a 30-year-old lady. Don't worry now, hee hee. Is it necessary to be so excited? Everyone in my manor has this blessing. Thor squinted at her. What kind of soul is the 30-year-old lady? Sky slowly calmed down. Everyone in the manor has a who. She thought of the relationship between the daughters living in the manor and Thor, and Ryu's cheeks blushed suddenly. By the way, I have to remind you that immortality is not free. Thor added. As a balance, the reproductive ability of most races is inversely proportional to the length of lifespan. Just like my father, King, in human I have been with my mother since the Bronze Age. Up to now, there are only 3 children, and one of them is adopted. When you gain eternal life, the chance of conceiving a child is infinitely close to 0. So, I want Dink in my life, Sky said indifferently. In fact, in Western countries, people are not so eager for children, and Sky is no exception. Alexander Pierce moved quickly. Taking advantage of Nick Fury's departure, Captain America and Natasha Romanoff were wanted. He quickly persuaded the council to launch the Insight Plan. Headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., Pierce took a sip of champagne and excitedly said to the council members who came, "Soon, we will witness a new history. From this moment on, there will be no more crimes in this world, a new world is coming. For the new era, TN Cup." As a high-level agent and boss of Hydra, he seldom expresses his emotions too much, but at this time it is still difficult to hide his inner excitement. As long as the helicarrier rises to a certain height, the weapons on it will be activated, instantly destroying all Hydra enemies. The congressmen were also very excited. They raised the champagne and drank it. Cheers to the new era. Definitely they don't know that the so-called new era is not the new era they imagined, but the new era of Hydra. At this moment, a clear voice suddenly came from the radio. "I'm Steve Rogers, Captain America. You must have heard a lot about me these days. There are many people who are hunting me. Now it's time for you to know the truth." He hesitated, and continued. "S.H.I.E.L.D. has changed, it has been taken over by Hydra, and Alexander Pierce is its head. So are many of the Special Forces and Insight Project personnel, and many people around us." The counselors glanced at Pierce in surprise. Pierce was expressionless, and the phone quietly sent a few messages. The Insight Plan is their purpose, not to deal with criminals at all, but to destroy all Hydra's enemies and put the whole world under its control. I know it's hard, but the price of freedom is high, and I'm willing to pay that price. I believe I'm not the only one. Although it was an impromptu speech, the speech was very appealing. Although they were wanted by S.H.I.E.L.D. just a moment ago, many people choose to believe in the captain and their spiritual leader. Crossbones broke into the office controlling the space carrier with a team of agents and ordered the technicians in charge of the launch, "Get into the launch sequence and let the spacecraft lift off." The audience was silent, and the head of technology AHFF glanced at him in surprise, but did not respond. "Launch the spaceship. Is there a problem with what I said?" Crossbones amplified his voice. The person in charge was sweating coldly. He took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't launch. This is the captain's order." Brush, a gun was pressed against the back of his head. The same gun, held to the back of Crossbones' head. "You're on the wrong team, Agent Sharon," Crossbones said coldly. He gestured to put down the gun in his hand, and shot suddenly while the gun was falling, knocking Sharon down to the ground. The people at the scene immediately divided into 2 groups. Gunshots rang out, and Crossbones activated the launch system while taking advantage of the chaos. "Unfortunately, you are on the wrong team." Crossbones raised his gun indifferently, pointing at Sharon's head. "It's you who are on the wrong team." A voice sounded from behind, and before Crossbones could react, he was grabbed by the collar, and the whole person flew out immediately. Sharon looked at the tall figure in front of her and showed a smile. "I'll kill you in the next second, don't you believe it? I'm sorry for taking your head." With a wave of Thor's hand, the surrounding Hydra agents went to the bottom instantly, twitching non-stop. Bang! A figure with a metal arm knocked Falcon to the ground. "Sam, go and insert the chip, he will give it to me." Steve stood in front of him. "Okay." Falcon didn't have hesitation. He quickly took off and rushed towards the flying space carrier. Steve looked at this familiar figure with affectionate expression on his face. "Bucky, it's me, Steve, have you forgotten?" His answer was a hard punch. At S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, the old congresswoman suddenly jumped up and quickly brought down the incoming Hydra agent, and the widow stinged at Pierce. He wiped his face with his hand, revealing a face that was disastrous to the country and the people. "Your Excellency the Secretary General, it's over." "What to do? The space carrier has already started and can't be stopped." Sharon Carter was so anxious that she was sweating profusely and kept typing on the keyboard. "It doesn't matter, let them take off normally, nothing will happen." Thor comforted, "Even if I can't stop it in the end, I will let them crash." Finally, Sharon paused. "Before this, do you have any other plans?" "Definitely have a plan. You think I came here to save you?" I think so. After all, there are quite a few people chasing me. On the space carrier, Falcon inserted the last chip and turned on the communicator, fixed. In front of a huge amounts of computer screens underground, Maria Hill instantly seized control of the helicarrier from Hydra. She operated quickly, turning the densely packed clearing targets on the screen into 3 space carriers. Wait a minute. Thor appeared behind her and took out a USB flash drive, the Hydra list in Dr. Zola's mind. Since the space carrier is going to be destroyed, it's better to use the waste first. Hill agreed and moved away from the seat. She knew she couldn't stop it even if she tried. On the space carrier, overwhelming weapons suddenly poured down, bullets, rockets. However, Thor found that there was a blank space in the densely packed clearing o'clock on this map, which seemed to block the detection of the space carrier. Sokovia, ha ha ha, I won. It's useless for you to catch me. The Insight plan has been launched, and soon, Hydra will rule the world. Alexander Pierce laughed wildly, and the counselors turned pale. The next moment, Pierce's smile froze on his face as a bullet burst through the window of the shield building, piercing his heart. The villain died from talking too much. Natalia complained lightly, and then added, but even if you don't talk, you can't run away. Nick Fury looked at Pierce, who was lying on the ground and refused to die, and sighed. Thor has cracked Dr. Zola's knowledge base and got the Hydra list. Pierce had a dazed look on his face, then closed his eyes. Nick Fury stared at his corpse in silence. Once, he could be a gun for this senior. Bucky, wake up, we're friends. Steve was slapped wildly. In fact, his strength has long been able to win, but the opponent is Bucky. Whenever occupied, he tried to wake Bucky's mind. And then got hit again. Boom. A wave of missiles flew over, bypassing Captain America and Bucky, and killed all the nearby Hydra rushing to help. Captain America was taken aback for a moment, then glanced at Bucky, who was also in a daze. He was a bit puzzled as to why Project Insight had eliminated Hydra instead of hitting him. But before he had time to think, Bucky pounced on him again. Under this wave of attacks, the Hydra hidden all over the world was almost wiped out, and Dr. Zola had more lists in his mind than anyone else. Even many Hydra who have been lurking for many years and even the original informants are dead, and Hydra who are ready to explode at any time have all been eliminated. Except Sokovia, which shielded the signal. After clearing Hydra, the helicarrier's weapons turned on each other. Even without Hydra, Thor also didn't want the Insight project to fall into the hands of the Council. As for private embezzlement, to be honest, Thor doesn't think much of these spaceships except for his vision plan. Number 2 Holy Place, that is the romance of men. Boom. There was an explosion on the helicarrier, and Captain America and Bucky, who were still entangled, fell down together. Thor took Maria Hill into the SHIELD headquarters, while Natalia and Sharon Carter were handling the follow-up. How's the situation? Nick Fury asked. Hydra around the world has basically been cleared, except for one place where the signal is blocked, Sokovia. The scepter embedded with the mind gem is there. What about SHIELD? The loss is more than half. Most of them were Hydra, and some were unfortunately killed in the battle. Thor sighed. SHIELD can basically be disbanded. Such a big matter, the Council will not let it go. Do you regret it? I won't regret it. It hurts to dig out the scabies, but only in this way can I regain my health and thrive. In a forest, Winter Soldier dragged the unconscious Captain America in the river and dragged him ashore. According to the order received, he was going to kill the other party. However, a voice in my heart kept telling him, he died, you will regret it. He sighed and decided to follow his heart. If this is not love, I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.